right, let's take a look at Lamb to the Slaughter. So we're going to take a look at some introduction materials here, and I'm going to provide you on Etsby with a PDF copy of the download of the text, as well as a link to a YouTube reading that you can, play YouTube in the background and follow along with your paper. Some people like that more. If we were in a classroom, I would be reading the story to you. I really enjoy story time, even with high school students. I like reading the stories, and it seems that for the most part, students are engaged a little bit more when you read to them. So if you would prefer to have the story read to you while following along with the PDF copy, then just follow the YouTube link. But let's go through the lesson that we have here. So you might recognize Roald Dahl. He is the author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I'm sure you've seen either the original movie or the newer movie with Johnny Depp. So he was born in 1916 to Norwegian parents, famous for his children's books like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Many of his adult tales have surprise endings. So Lamb to the Slaughter is obviously, you can tell by the title, is not a kid's book, more of a teen to adult style short story. He unfortunately passed away in 1990. We're going to take a look at some important terms here to give us some background on this story. Oh, my lights went out. I got to turn them back on and wave my hands. There we go. Suspense. I'm sure you've heard of that, watching TV or maybe reading. But suspense is a state of feeling of excited or anxious, uncertainty about what may happen. Suspense is like often in horror films or horror stories, mystery films and stories. Narrator. So the narrator is the person who narrates something, especially a character, who recounts the events of a novel or a narrative poem. So we talked about in our short story elements PowerPoint and worksheet that you guys had to fill out, the narrator can take the form maybe of a first-person narrator, a third-person narrator, an omniscient narrator. So that's what we're referring to here. Irony is the expression of one's meaning by using language that normally signifies the opposite. Alibi. I'm sure you've heard the term alibi before. We're going to go into irony more once we get into the story. So alibi is a claim or piece of evidence that one was elsewhere when an act, typically a criminal one, is alleged to have taken place. So if you remember from movies or TV shows, and you got the cop shows up with his notepad. He opens up his notepad. Whoosh. So where were you on the night of August 13th, 2020? And he's going to write down some information. That where were you is your alibi. If you don't have an alibi, then you start to become a suspect. Point of view is also it refers to who is telling or narrating the story. So point of view and narrator, we're just touching back on those again. Omniscient. An omniscient narrator is all-seeing and all-knowing. So we're going to have Lamb to the Slaughter narrated to us through an omniscient point of view, meaning that we're going to know what all of the characters are thinking, what they're all saying. We're not going to be left in the dark about anything. Exasperated is intensely irritated and frustrated. That's a fancy word for saying super mad. Super annoyed. I'm super annoyed with you right now. So the next time someone is super annoying you, you can say, oh, you are making me exasperated right now. Try and sound smart to your friends. Foreshadowing is a literary device in which a writer gives an advance hint of what is to come later in the story. So Foreshadowing is a pretty cool technique. I really enjoy foreshadowing. Sometimes it takes like the second time reading or watching something to know that the foreshadowing is taking place, unless it is very obvious. So let's take a look here. So we got the terminology. So at this point in time, you're going to be watching, or sorry, not watching, but you're going to listen to the story, or just read it, whatever works for you, and follow the YouTube link, listen to the story, follow along on the PDF document. Once you are done, there's some content questions here, some comprehension questions. So let's just read through these. I'm hoping that we can take these up on Teams with a little bit of input from you guys. We'll see how that goes. Okay. Continuing on, someone had walked into my office, so I had to hit the pause button there. Anyways, so you're going to be answering the full sentence form for these questions. We'll just read through them for you. Describe Mary Maloney at the beginning of the story. What kind of wife does she appear to be? How is her behavior different by the end of the story? How can you tell that Patrick Maloney is preoccupied? What news does Patrick have for Mary? Why does Mary go ahead and make supper after all? What is Mary's first concern as she builds her alibi? And number 7, how does the author use the elements of surprise, foreshadowing, and irony in the story? So those are the questions. I'm hoping that we can take them up as a class in Teams with a little bit of input from you all. The next activity is called a Jigsaw Activity. So the following excerpts all come from the short story, Lamb to the Slaughter, but they're jumbled up. So what I want you to do is to try and rearrange them into the correct order. So you don't have to rewrite the whole sentences again. I've numbered them 1 through 9. You can just, write out the numbers in that, in the order that they happen in the story. So maybe it's like, okay, 6 is the first one, 3 is next after that, and then 8, those are obviously not the answers, but that's what you need to do for the jigsaw, is to put it in correct order. If you need to reference the story to do that, you can, whatever. Or you can try and do it from memory. We're going to take a look at irony. So remember we talked, how I said earlier, you're going to be taking a look at irony a little bit more closely. So there's 3 types of irony. There's verbal irony, which is when a character says one thing but means another. There's situational irony, which is when the reader expects something to happen, but the opposite or unexpected happens instead. And we have dramatic irony, when the reader knows something the character does not. Now, we might see some dramatic irony in Land of the Slaughter because it is told from an omniscient point of view. We are going to know what characters aren't going to know, right? We're going to know what this character's thinking. We're going to know what this character's thinking. We're going to know what they think about each other. So we might come across some dramatic irony in this story. So, what you need to do for this chart is, there's some things here. So I'll just read through the first one. Because Mary is happily waiting for her husband, we expect them to get along very well. When he arrives, however, they do not. So what type of irony is this? You can write it in there. Is it verbal irony, situational irony, or dramatic irony? And then what explanation do you have to prove this? Okay, so we'll go over this in a little bit more detail in Teams if we need to. And then we're going to do a compare and contrast. So we're already getting to watch movies for English class, although it's not like the greatest movie in the world. But so using the Venn diagram below, I'll just have to format this a little bit, but there's the Venn diagram. sure you've seen a Venn diagram before. Click on the link. This link should bring you to, let's see what happens here. Cool. So School Tube should bring you right to Alfred Hitchcock Presents Lamb to the Slaughter. So there we go. So you can watch that. It's about 25 minutes long, really not too bad. So you watch the Alfred Hitchcock version of Lamb to the Slaughter after you have read the story. And what you need to do for this is to compare and contrast the similarities and differences that you find between the movie and the text we read of Lamb to the Slaughter. So with the Venn diagram here, one side can be movie, the other side can be text. So in the middle is the similarities. Outside of the middle is going to be the differences. There's some pretty remarkable differences in the movie in comparison to the text of the story. So you'll be able to put these differences here and what's different in the text compared to the movie over here. It's just a different little thing to do. And for those of you in the academic portion of this English class, which there's more of you in that. Anyways, I'm going to be uploading another thing for you, an opinion paragraph that you will have to write based on evidence from the book. Similar to the opinion paragraph that you are writing or have written for me already. This one, however, you're not going to have to look for outside resources. You can just write from the text in the book, from the movie, and so forth. So, this video is going to be uploaded and posted. If you have any, once again, if you have any questions, you can shoot me a message on Teams or on Edsby, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you enjoy the story. It's one of my favorites to teach, and I've read it, I've taught it probably about 10 times or so to students in grades 9. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy it as much as I do, and look forward to seeing some of your responses.